There are heroes in the Bible whose names fill entire books, who lead armies, part seas, and stand before kings with thunder in their voices. But there are also quieter heroes, ordinary people whose courage unfolds in hidden places, far from palaces and crowds. They held no power and commanded no soldiers. They were not queens or warriors. They were simply two Hebrew midwives, women whose hands were meant to bring life into the world. But they lived in dangerous days. A new Pharaoh ruled Egypt, a king who did not remember Joseph and did not care for the people of Israel. He saw their growing numbers as a threat, and his fear hardened into cruelty. And soon he would hand these two ordinary women a command soaked in blood. In that moment, everything would hang in the balance. They could fear Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the world, or they could fear God, and the choice they made would echo for thousands of years. Their names were Shiphrah and Puah, and this is their story. Long after Joseph had saved Egypt from famine, long after his wisdom had filled Pharaoh's storehouses with grain, and long after his family had settled in the fertile land of Goshen, a new king rose over Egypt. This Pharaoh did not remember Joseph. He did not care that a Hebrew man had once protected Egypt from hunger. He did not honor the covenant kindness that had been shown in earlier days. All he saw was the growing number of Israelites living within his borders. The children of Israel had become many. Their tents and homes spread across the land. Their families were strong, their children numerous, and their hope stubborn. Even under hard conditions, they continued to grow. Mothers gave birth to sons and daughters. Fathers worked long days and still came home to bless their children. Grandparents told stories of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. They remembered the God of their fathers, the God who made promises, the God who saw them even in a foreign land. But Pharaoh looked at the Israelites with fear. To him, their strength was not a blessing. He saw them as a threat.
"There are too many of them,"
Pharaoh said to his officials.
"If war breaks out, they may join our enemies. They may fight against us and escape from the land."
Fear grew into suspicion. Suspicion grew into cruelty. And cruelty became law. So Pharaoh placed slave masters over the Israelites. The Egyptians forced them to build store cities, Pithom and Ramesses. The Hebrews labored beneath the hot Egyptian sun, carrying heavy loads and lifting stones. The crack of whips echoed across the building fields. The cries of exhausted workers rose into the air. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more the Israelites multiplied. Babies were still born. Songs were still sung softly at night. Prayers were still whispered by mothers rocking their children to sleep. Among the Hebrew people were two women whose names would be remembered forever: Shiphrah and Puah. Shiphrah, whose name may mean beauty or to make fair. Puah, whose name may carry the sense of splendor or one who cries out. They were midwives, women called to help mothers in the dangerous and holy hour of childbirth. When a woman's labor pains began, families sent for them. Shiphrah and Puah came carrying cloths, water, herbs, and wisdom. They had seen life enter the world again and again. They knew the sounds of labor, the fear in a young mother's eyes, and the first sharp cry of a newborn child. Their work was not glamorous. It was done in dim rooms by lamplight. It was done among poor women, tired women, women whose backs had bent all day beneath Egyptian burdens. Yet Shiphrah and Puah treated each birth as sacred. Together, they had helped bring many Hebrew children into life. The scriptures preserve their names, and this in itself is remarkable. While the mighty Pharaoh who ruled the most powerful empire of the ancient world is never named in the story, he is simply the king of Egypt. a faceless figure of tyranny. But these two midwives, humble women of no political standing, are named and remembered for all generations. One day, Shiphrah and Puah were summoned to hear Pharaoh's command. Whether by messenger or royal order, the meaning was clear. The king of Egypt wanted to speak with them. The two women stood before the king. He spoke with cold command.
When you help the Hebrew women give birth,
Pharaoh said,
look at the child as it is born. If it is a son, kill him. But if it is a daughter, let her live.
The words fell like stones. They had been called to protect life, not destroy it. Their work was to help mothers and babies survive the danger of birth. Now Pharaoh wanted to turn their hands into weapons. He wanted the first cry of a baby boy to be his last. It was a perfect crime. In the king's cold reasoning, no army would be needed. No public outcry would arise. The Hebrew people would simply slowly begin to die out. The daughters allowed to live and eventually marry into Egypt. The sons quietly destroyed, the nation withering at its root. And it all depended on two midwives. To disobey Pharaoh could mean death, but there was another king whom Shiphrah and Puah feared more than Pharaoh. They feared the Lord, the God of Israel, the maker of life. They knew Pharaoh had power over Egypt, but God had power over breath itself. They left the palace with heavy hearts, but not confused ones. Pharaoh had ordered death, but they would not obey evil. Not all courage looks like armies marching into battle. Sometimes it is simply refusing to do evil when evil has become the law. So Shiphrah and Puah continued their work. When they were called to the bedside of a laboring Hebrew woman, and when a son was born, they did not kill him. Day after day, birth after birth, they quietly disobeyed the king. Sometimes babies came quickly before anyone could arrive. Hebrew women, hardened by labor and strengthened by suffering, often gave birth with astonishing courage. Mothers helped daughters, sisters helped sisters, neighbors stood ready. The community learned to protect life together. But whenever Shiphrah and Puah were there, they chose life. Pharaoh began to notice. The Israelites were still multiplying. Baby boys were still being carried in their mother's arms. Little sons were still playing near doorways. The reports kept coming in. More children, more sons, more strength. The king's secret weapon had failed. And so once more the two midwives were summoned before the throne. This time, the king's voice was sharp with suspicion and anger.
why have you done this?
Pharaoh demanded.
Why have you let the boys live?
The question echoed through the hall. They answered Pharaoh with wisdom, in a way that was shrewd, protecting both themselves and the children they had saved.
The Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women,
They said.
they are vigorous. They give birth before the midwives arrive.
Their answer used the strength of the Hebrew women as a shield. These women had endured years of hard labor and suffering, and many of them were strong and resilient. Some births happened quickly before a midwife could arrive. By pointing to this reality, Shiphrah and Puah gave Pharaoh an answer he could not easily disprove. How could they kill the babies, they implied, when so often they arrived to find the child already born, already in its mother's arms, already alive and well? Whether Pharaoh fully believed them or simply could not prove otherwise, the immediate danger passed. The midwives walked out of the palace alive, and the babies of Israel continued to live. The Bible says that because the midwives feared God, He was good to them. He gave the midwives families of their own. That detail is beautiful. Shiphrah and Puah had protected the households of others, and God built households for them. In a world where Pharaoh tried to erase names, God preserved theirs. And there is something even larger at work here. By saving the Hebrew baby boys, Shiphrah and Puah were preserving the very nation through which all the promises of God would flow. Among the children born in those terrible days, perhaps even saved by hands like theirs, certainly born into the same shadow of Pharaoh's decree, was a boy who would be drawn from the waters of the Nile and raised in Pharaoh's own house. His name was Moses, the deliverer who would one day stand before another Pharaoh and command, "In the name of the Lord, let my people go." When Pharaoh's plan with the midwives failed, his evil grew bolder and more public. No longer able to rely on secret murder, he issued a command to all his people.
Every son that is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive.
What had been whispered was now shouted. What had been hidden was now open law. Pharaoh no longer spoke only to Shiphrah and Puah. Now he called all Egypt to take part in his cruelty. Yet even then, God was not defeated. Shiphrah and Puah did not live to see every result of their courage. They did not know that their small acts of faithfulness would be read and remembered thousands of years later. They simply knew what was right.